In our 20s, it's easy to feel like we have all the time in the world, but is that mindset really helping us grow, or is it kind of holding us back and making us let life slip by? Hello, welcome back to Feel Good Lab, the podcast where we explore the intersection between personal growth and career success and all the good stuff that happens in between. How are you, Feel Good fam? I missed you. I know I didn't do an episode last week. I just needed a week to sort of refresh my brain and rethink about how I wanted to address some of the topics that I wanted to write about on the podcast. So anywho, we're back. Thanks for bearing with me as I'm trying to figure out like a good content schedule so that I'm able to create good content for you and instead of just post for the sake of posting, if you know what I mean. I do want to bring some more guests onto the show as well. So I'm trying to organize that for kind of like the coming months. So stay tuned for that. In this episode, I wanted to talk about complacency. So what is it? What does it look like? How does it show up? What does it feel like? And then why we need to also switch our mindset now to be focused on proactive growth instead. Before we dive into this big topic, let's first talk about my feel-good moment of the week. Make sure to leave your feel-good moments in the comments below. I think I want to start maybe featuring some of your feel-good moments in the episodes instead. You're always hearing about mine, but I would love to hear about yours. So if you're watching or listening to this on Spotify or YouTube, make sure you go into the comments and let me know what was one moment from your week that was a feel-good moment that really stood out to you and that you'd want to share with me. I feel like a lot of my feel-good moments end up being these random little interactions that I have with various humans that I come across in life, and this week is no different. I actually went to go get my passport photo taken at London Drugs 2 days ago now, and the guy that was helping me, he just kind of seemed like he was in a bit of a rush. Maybe he was about to go on lunch, maybe he was about to end his shift. I don't know what his story is, but as I kind of approached him, I can just kind of like sense his energy that he was so sick of his day. And so it got to my turn. I was like, yeah, I like to take passport photos. He's like, okay, great. He like rushed me to the little space where you take the photo. We start taking the photos. He shows me the first set and he's like, hey, these are the photos. Do you like them? If not, I can take them again. I look at them and I was like, is it okay if we just take them one more time? And he's like, yeah, of course, no worries. So we take the second set and he shows me again. He was like, what do you think? I think you could kind of tell from my face that I didn't love them. And he kind of like right away said, don't worry, we can like take them again. And so me being nervous about this whole situation of like taking passport photos, but also anxious of like not wanting to waste his time, I started blabbing and started being like, oh, you know what? Like, I'm so sorry. I don't know why I'm so anxious about this. I'm just feeling all types of anxiety. Like maybe it's because this photo is going to follow me for the next 10 years. Like, I don't know. And so he kind of like chuckles to himself because you can kind of see that I'm just flailing a little bit in the photo seat. Anyways, we go on to take another set. We ended up having to retake them because my hair just kept getting in the way and I needed them to be like out of my eyes and like not covering my eyebrows or something like that. As we were taking these photos, we just started cracking jokes about the whole situation. I was like, I don't know why it looks like I'm in pain in these photos. Like, what the heck? And he's just like laughing to himself. And we ended up having actually a really nice interaction. And I feel like it really eased my anxieties about taking these silly photos. And then his mood seemed a lot brighter and lighter as well at the end of it. And so like as I was paying for the photos, we were kind of just like joking around about them. Yeah, he just seemed happier. And because his mood had changed, it kind of made me feel more at ease as well. And so I'm glad that I was able to make someone laugh that day, but also it just felt like such a genuine human interaction. And I guess being a homebody, I don't experience a ton of these. A lot of my interactions are very like transactional or like hi bye sort of interactions. So actually spending like even just a few extra minutes with somebody and having little jokes or like laughing just felt really nice. And who knows, maybe in his head he's like, oh, this girl is so annoying. She keeps taking photos and I just want to go on break. But it felt nice for me in the moment. So I hope it made him feel good as well. So what is complacency? Complacency to me really is that state where you're no longer challenging yourself and you're no longer pushing yourself, and you're kind of just happy to sit in your comfort zone and not really try anything that forces you to step out of that. It's something that will show up very differently for very people. It can look very obvious, and it can look like isolating yourself and not wanting to go out and not wanting to do things, but it can also disguise itself in productivity or working hard as well. I think a lot of the times when I go into a zone of overwhelm, or when I'm just overly activated because I have so many things to do, and when I take a step back and I see my endless to-do list, I have these moments where I get flooded, and that complacency state starts to override my system, and it'll disguise itself as productivity. So it'll disguise itself as me like suddenly hyper focusing on something that is not really anything that I need to focus on in that moment. So it's like an 80% task that gets me 20% of the results. It's just like a task that is not mission critical, and I will feel like at least I am doing something. But when you are putting all your focus towards tasks that are low priority, that don't have a target or a goal, or don't push you to any of your current targets and goals, it ends up being a bit of a time waster as well. So really, complacency is a little bit of a sneaky thing, but essentially it is a state where you are staying kind of stagnant in where you are, and it's kind of forcing you to stay in that spot. Proactive growth, on the other hand, is all about being intentional about your growth, your plan, your motivation, and just making sure that you are pushing yourself forward. This could look like setting and pursuing your goals. This could look like doing a review of your life and just understanding where you are currently. But essentially, you're just trying to be intentional about your personal growth, your self-improvement, your career advancement, whatever area of your life that you want to kind of like advance forward. I really think your 20s is the era where we're supposed to be laying down the groundwork and building the foundation to what our life is going to look like in our 30s and beyond. Yes, your 20s are all about making mistakes and experiencing new things and learning about who you are, but all of these experiences that we have will start to add to and compound into the baseline of who we are as humans. There was actually a study done by Harvard Business Review that showed that people who set and pursue goals in their 20s actually felt like 30% more general life satisfaction in their 30s and beyond. There was another study done by Stanford University that reported that 80% of individuals said that the habits that they built in their 20s continue to persist into their 30s and beyond as well. And if anything, I think those reports just kind of show that we need to be a little bit more conscious about how we view our life and our time in our 20s, and not just kind of let it slip by. I was having a conversation with a friend of mine who turned 30 recently, and I was asking him about the experience of going from 29 to 30, and he was telling me that although he didn't really expect much of a difference in how he felt, there was this mindset shift that happened that was completely unexpected, that pushed him to start thinking about where he was at in life, what he wanted, how he wanted to view life, and it just made him ponder a lot more of these big life questions. Even though I'm not quite in the 30s club yet, I do understand where he's coming from, because I think your late 20s are kind of this like limbo period where you're no longer wanting to live the same life that you lived in your early 20s. But then also half the people you know are buying homes, starting families, having children, getting married. And so if you're not quite at the stage where you're ready to do that yet, you're kind of just stuck in the middle. It's like, okay, so I don't feel that young anymore, but I also don't feel that old. And I think this limbo period is oftentimes where some of that complacency starts to set in, because if you haven't figured out what your plan is and what your goals are, or if you haven't decided on something to work towards, you're suddenly at a bit of a crossroads. You're like, okay, do I continue to pursue my happiness, my joy, the stuff that I want to do and experience, or do I start planning for retirement and buying a home? Like, what do I allot my money to? What should I set my sights on? It does get a little bit confusing. In today's day and age, we also have so many options that are available to us and so much easily accessible information. And I think that definitely adds to that overall sense of lack of direction or lack of clarity for your goals, because we do have so much to choose from. It's like, do I move across the world and be single forever? Or do I find someone I love in the city that I live in and stay here forever? It's that sense of analysis paralysis where there are too many what ifs and too many paths that you can take. And so you just go into that state of overwhelm and you're just unable to make a decision at all. Another common reason why complacency starts to set in this limbo state is our fear of judgment and our fear of failure. And I think this is more and more present in our youth because of, again, that access for information, but also the access that we have to other people via like our digital spaces. Even if you're not somebody who shares your life chronically online like I am or like a lot of other people are, you are still infinitely more accessible as a human being than you were 10, 20, 30 years ago. And no matter how you dice it, you are kind of opening yourself up to increased opportunities for judgment. That fear of making a mistake or failing or being judged can easily lead to stagnation and cause people to want to stay in their comfort zone and not try something new. And then in that same vein, there is that aspect of social pressure and comparison as well. Social media can often create this distorted sense of success, and it can really cause people to feel like they are falling behind in life compared to their peers, or even make them feel like they can't walk their own unique paths because they're trying to keep up with what they see online. I really believe that we live in a world that doesn't really set us up for success when it comes to figuring out who we are, what we want to do, and who we want to be as individual human beings, because there is just so much access for us to be able to look at what everyone else has going on. But because of that, I also think it's doubly important that we really figure out what complacency can look like in our lives and how we can make that switch from being complacent and being stagnant to having more of a growth mindset and going after proactive growth so that we can continue to fight against like the things that are holding us back. So enough of the negative, let's actually dive into what proactive growth can look like in your life. The first strategy, or maybe the first step, is to really practice self-reflection. I've said it before and I'll say it again, but I truly don't believe that you can properly plan for your life if you don't understand who you are today and what you're all about, what your values are, and where you're really at. Self-reflection not only helps you identify like the areas that you need to improve on, but it shows you areas that you should celebrate as well. And I think that's something that a lot of us are missing. We are constantly striving for more, and that's great, but are you actually celebrating your wins and reminding yourself of where you've come from and how far you've already gone? I talked about the Wheel of Life exercise a couple of episodes ago, so I'm not going to go into detail about how it works, but I think this is the perfect exercise or the perfect tool to have in your tool belt when it comes to self-reflection, because it forces you to look at each part of your life as almost like an equal piece of the pie and then evaluate how you've been feeling about each of those important aspects one by one. And so it gives you a very holistic look at how you're feeling about your general wellness and finances and environment and all of those things, so that you can really figure out what you need to focus on and what you need to continue to work on. I also recently started to use mind mapping everywhere as well, whether that is for self-reflection in my journaling, whether that is to build on ideas. But I just think that it is such a great visual tool for you to map out where your thoughts about specific topics are going. So in the example of self-reflection, what I do is I'll probably put like my name or like a period of time in the middle and then draw a circle around it. And then I will create separate circles, like separate bubbles with the different aspects of my life that I want to focus on. So again, that can be finances, your physical health, your mental wellness, your relationships, maybe your environment or your fun category. And then once you have those separate bubbles created, you draw an arrow that goes from your main bubble, which is your name or that time period, and then out towards those individual bubbles. And then from there, just start to write down any ideas that come to mind when it comes to each of those individual areas. And I would recommend kind of separating this out to one mind map that is specifically created for kind of reviewing your life. So looking at each of those bubbles and writing down how you've been feeling about that specific area in your life and how you think it's been going. And then creating an identical mind map, except this time you're going to write down what your goals in those different areas are, what you want to achieve in all of those specific categories. So that's always going to be the first step to pushing ourselves to proactive growth. Then comes the goal setting and vision planning. If you feel like you've been in a state of complacency for a while, you might actually feel a lot of resistance when you're trying to do this, because the thing about humans is that we are wired for familiarity and we're wired for comfort. So anything that feels different to our regular routine and how we have been living is going to be faced with resistance mentally. So instead of trying to jump the gun and creating these massive goals for ourselves, which really is just kind of setting ourselves up for failure, start small. Start with really small and achievable goals that gradually get bigger and bigger, which is going to help you build momentum and just help you feel good about yourself as you're learning to step out of your comfort zone. Another great strategy for proactive growth is really just trying to learn something new. And I think this is a really fun strategy as well, because I personally hated school when I was actually forced to like learn things. But now that I'm an adult and nobody is forcing me to learn about subjects I don't really care about, learning has become such a fun practice for me. The fact that I can actually choose what I'm interested in and then dive deep and learn everything I can about that topic, chef's kiss. It's just kind of become a hobby of mine almost. So figure out what could be fun to learn for you that could be a little bit challenging as well. And obviously it'd be amazing if the things that you're learning are aligning with your goals as well, or it's teaching you a skill that can help you reach your goal faster or more efficiently. But not everything you learn has to be aligned in that way. I think especially when you're just starting out and you're just trying to push yourself forward an inch, just look for topics that you think will be fun to learn, because again, it's about building that momentum. Like nobody can expect you to just go 180 and go from completely wanting to stay within your comfort zone to completely jumping out of your comfort zone and trying a bunch of different things and setting a bunch of goals. Like it's about slowly making that shift, but in a way that builds momentum and that compounds so that it becomes easier and easier for you. This next strategy, honestly, is something that I'm not even good at, and it's something that I struggle with, but it's networking and building more beneficial relationships, I guess. While I was on my Europe trip, my friends and I actually decided to do this thing where we gave each other a specific goal. So we went in a circle and we were each assigned one other person, and taking what we know about that person, we actually created goals for them that we will revisit like a year from now to see if we were able to accomplish. The goal that my friend Summer gave me was to actually start trying to make friends in all the cities that I get to visit. Like I get to travel for work, I travel for fun, and oftentimes, yes, I have these amazing fun interactions with people, but rarely do I ever build a connection or an actual relationship with them. And so her challenge for me really was to learn to like network and build my network so that I can one day potentially have friends in all of the different cities I get to go to. There was actually a period post-COVID where I was struggling with social interactions so much. I think already pre-COVID, I'd started kind of entering like the introverted stages of my life where I really couldn't deal with like networking events or like meeting strangers, I was more than happy and bubbly when I was with my friends. But when it came to actually like networking and meeting people that I didn't know, or if I got invited to a party filled with people I've never met, there started becoming this sense of like social anxiety, or I guess at least like battery drainage every time I came across one of those situations. But this became so prominent post-COVID to the point where I was actually starting to get a lot of anxiety from just making eye contact with random people on the street. And so, of course, I brought it up in therapy. And one of the challenges that my therapist gave me, or like some homework that she gave me, was to actually push myself out of my comfort zone and build resilience against that. And so the challenge was to make eye contact with 10 random strangers on the street. And instead of looking away and like running away like I would at that point in my life, I had to hold their eye contact. And if it starts to feel awkward, just smile. This felt like such an insurmountable challenge at the time. But if I actually think back about it, it was really easy because the time that you have to make eye contact with someone as you're walking by them is so short because you are like walking by each other. And although it was so uncomfortable to do this at the time, it did really help me start to build up that resilience towards that single thing, which was making eye contact with people. But that then snowballed into me being more comfortable, like making eye contact when I'm talking to someone, which is really helpful when you're trying to make a friend or build a connection with someone. Maybe that challenge really did root more deeply than I thought, because this year I've felt more comfortable with myself in social situations than I have in probably the last decade. I see social interactions, I see socializing and meeting people in a completely different light now. And I actually find that it's something that I oftentimes look forward to doing, because now I see it as, okay, well, I get to meet so many cool new people and hear their stories and learn about what they do. And I know that that's just going to help like expand my mind and open my mind up to new opportunities and different ways of seeing things. And that in itself, I think, is just really exciting. If I think back about a lot of the people that I've come across in life, they really did help me shape who I want to be and my career goals, because they showed me what was possible in all of these different fields in the industries that I knew and loved. And so I think there is something to say about networking not only being a great way to like connect with people, but it is a great way for you to start building a new image or goal or intention for yourself as well. It's kind of like the social model, right? It's like if you see someone doing something, it makes you feel like that thing is possible for you as well. And it makes challenges that you might be facing feel easier, because it's that natural human thought of, oh, if they can do it, that means I can do it as well. I know I mentioned the terminology growth mindset earlier, and if you haven't heard about or like learned about what the growth mindset is, I do want to talk about it a little bit in this episode as well. I actually learned about the growth mindset in a different podcast that I was listening to a couple of years back, and it for some reason just really stuck with me. I personally think this is a great way to look at your 20s, and it's something that will really help push you out of your comfort zone and that state of complacency. Essentially, the growth mindset is the belief that your skills, your abilities, your intelligence, and your talents are not fixed traits. And what I mean by that is that those are all things that can be worked on and can be improved over time. People with growth mindsets are really just seeing mistakes, failures, and challenges as opportunities for them to learn from and to grow from. Whereas somebody who has a fixed mindset has the belief that certain people can do certain things because they were born with a natural talent, or that they're just smarter than me, and there's no way that I can do what they do because I'm just not as smart, not as talented, I don't have these skills, I don't have these abilities, and and that's just who I am. So you can see how the fixed mindset really aligns with that state of complacency. It's that thought of, well, I can't do it because I don't have this skill or this ability or wasn't born with this talent. And so I'm not even going to try. I'm just going to stick with what I know, and this is my comfort zone, and I'm happy here. I think the best way for us to actually develop a growth mindset is to really understand what it looks like to have a growth mindset. And what it looks like is it looks like embracing challenges. We're not going to see challenges as a threat to who we are, our abilities, because really that's just your ego talking. Challenges are always there for you to learn from. Every challenge you come across, whether you move through that challenge successfully or you're held back by that challenge and you have to visit a different path, is a great learning opportunity for you to develop your skills and learn how to build a solution that works for you. And that kind of leads me into the second point, which is that if you have a growth mindset, you are persistent against setbacks. Instead of giving up, we're going to push through the difficulty and see failures as just temporary. I think a lot of us catastrophize failures and mistakes, but really, again, they're just learning opportunities, and the feeling that we get from them is so fleeting and so temporary. Sometimes when we come across a setback, it's easy to just get into that mindset of, well, this isn't possible anymore and I'm just going to give up. But I think we have to remember that oftentimes the reward is just so much sweeter than how hard that challenge may feel at the time. I think it kind of comes back to learning to self-reflect and learning to set goals as well, because when you have an understanding of what you want and who you want to be, you're really just not going to let anything get in your way of achieving that. People with a growth mindset also see effort as the path to mastery. And what I mean by that is that you see effort as being essential to you achieving your goals. Min-maxing, easiest, simplest, hacks are all words that are major buzzwords in our vocabulary and in this era that we live in. And I think that's fine. I think that it is important to try to figure out the most efficient way that you can do something. But I think that a lot of us take that and start to discount the amount of effort that it actually takes to build something and create something or to accomplish a goal. So yes, go ahead, engineer your way to do something as efficiently as possible, but don't ever forget that effort is what's going to take you there. And there's never going to be a path where you have zero effort and it'll still get you to where you want to be as quickly or as easily in a as fulfilling way. Learning from criticism is another trait that I think is closely tied to the growth mindset. This is something that you have to learn really early on if you work in any creative field or if you work in marketing or have any sort of design job, because you can't be married to your ideas and not be able to take criticism, especially when you're actually on the job and working with teams and working with different departments. You're going to have a lot of people with a lot of different opinions. And instead of just sticking to your guns and being like, no, mine is the best, I'm the expert here, which sometimes you do have to be assertive with that, but you also have to take in everyone's comments and opinions and criticisms so that you can actually grow in your field as well. Rather than taking criticism personally, use it as feedback to improve and adapt, or use it as guidance to continue to build on your skill set. Lastly, and definitely one of the most important points, is that people with a growth mindset look to others for inspiration, and they see others as inspiration rather than a competitor. Instead of feeling threatened by others' achievements and successes, they will look at it as inspiration and motivation and proof that they can then achieve those things as well. Because that's the whole idea behind the growth mindset, right? It's coming to things with a beginner's mind and believing in yourself that you have the ability to grow your skills, to grow as a human, and to put in the effort and dedication it takes to accomplish accomplish the goals that you've set for yourself. We really covered a lot in this episode, but to make things really easy and actionable for you, I'm going to give you 4 small challenges that I want you to keep in mind as you're going about your day over the next week or month. All 4 of these challenges really put the growth mindset into practice. The first one is the reframe challenge. So the next time that you are faced with a setback or a challenge, I want you to just take a pause, write down somewhere in your notes, on a piece of paper, in your journal, what that challenge is, and then reframe it to how you can see that as an opportunity. So for example, let's say you couldn't find basil in the grocery store and you're trying to make something for dinner that has basil in it. Instead of seeing that as a setback and being like, well, I can't make dinner tonight anymore, I'm just going to eat McDonald's or whatever, see how you can turn that into an opportunity. So there might not be basil, but can I use a different spice and just be creative with how I create this meal? Or can the ingredients that I've already purchased be repurposed to make something different? It may seem like such a small, minute little change, but again, it's always these small, minute things that compound and start to make us different and better and help us grow. The second challenge is to celebrate your effort rather than your result. This is one that I need to practice myself as well. And you can do this in a couple of different ways. You can do it proactively by, let's say, if you journal, write in your journal every single day some of the efforts that you can celebrate with yourself. Or you can do this challenge when you are faced with a disappointment as well. So maybe you weren't able to get the result that you wanted on an exam or for a specific project, or you weren't able to meet a specific sales goal or whatever it may be. See the effort that you put into it rather than just the result. So look back and be like, hey, I actually put in so many hours this month to accomplish X, Y, and Z, and I'm going to be proud of myself for that, but I'm also going to see it as an opportunity for me to learn from, and I can try to analyze why exactly I didn't get the result that I wanted, even though I put in this much amount of effort. Maybe it does take more effort. Maybe I need to approach it a different way, but it's that overall sort of having a positive mindset around not getting the result that you wanted. The third challenge is to reflect on a mistake. So if you feel like you've made a mistake, if you feel like you failed at something, sit down and take the time to actually write out and think about how that mistake can actually be a learning opportunity. I think it's important to even write down okay, how did this make me feel? But then dive right into what can I learn from this experience and how can I do better the next time around? Lastly, and personally, the one that I think is the most fun because it actually involves other people, is to go out there and seek feedback for something that you do and use this as a resilience building challenge as well, right? I'm not asking you to go to your CEO and ask them for feedback on something that you've been working on personally, or I'm not asking you to go to a professional artist to ask them on feedback on your novice painting, but maybe start small and ask your friends, your loved ones, what their thoughts and opinions are on something that you've recently been working on. Once you're able to see criticism as constructive criticism and use that as a tool for growing and learning, it's just going to make your life feel so much easier because suddenly everyone is offering you their help. Everyone is trying to help you accomplish your goal and make things easier for you. It's one of those slight mindset shifts that really does make a significant difference in how you feel about what you work on as well. Yes, your 20s are a great time to discover yourself, to have fun, to make mistakes, but it really is the perfect time to invest in yourself, to set goals, and to take risks as well. If you only take one thing away from this podcast episode, I hope you remember that every small step that you take can actually compound to a much greater result. And yes, pushing yourself out of your comfort zone might seem really, really scary and challenging right now, but it's all about about building your tolerance and your resilience. So even if you can just accomplish one small thing today, like do a self-reflection or set one small goal, it's the consistency of building that into a mindset and building that into a habit that really starts to help you believe in yourself, which is honestly the baseline and the key to achieving anything in your life. If you made it this far, I love you, Feel Good Fam. Thank you for spending the time with me today. Leave a spicy pepper emoji in the comments so that I know you're still here. I really hope that this episode, if there's anything specific that you want me to chat through with you, please feel free to let me know in the comments as well. But that is everything for today. I hope you're having an amazing day wherever you're tuning in from, and I will catch you in the next episode. Bye! Oh, I'm being a good girl. Mika decided to join us today for the episode. Do you have something to say? No? Okay, good girl.